All right. Hello, Quinton Reviews.
Hello.
How are you?
Um, I'm fine and dandy. I'm currently
Good.
puffing up my chest to try and get the camera to see my funny shirt.
For anyone who may not know, early in the days of your channel, you used to make Doctor Who videos.
Yes.
And from my understanding, you were a longtime fan of the show.
Yes. Yeah, there's
How long have you been watching, actually?
um so I was born in 1996. So it just happened that my mom like grew up on military bases and stuff. That's kind of the origin of the whole story. So when my mom was a kid, they were always on military bases because my grandfather was in the military, and so my
Mm.
mom ended up watching Doctor Who. I don't know if it was on PBS or if it was like there was some reason that they had Doctor Who playing near military bases. I don't know, but so my mom was into the show, and my mom is a big fan of the actor Paul McGann. So the
Mm.
year I was born, they announced, "Oh, we're going to do a Doctor Who reboot pilot. It's going to star Paul McGann." So my mom insisted upon watching it, and my dad decided to watch it too. My dad was really into like Back to the Future,
Mm.
and so they recorded on VHS. They watched it, and I actually don't even know if they recorded it. But my dad was like, "That was interesting. That was fun." And then one day he was flipping through channels, and we had I forget what you call it. It's not cable, but it's the kind of TV that you can pick up just with an antenna, that's free like PBS. Um,
Yeah.
we had that set up. We had a big antenna that was on a big metal pole that my dad had put into the ground, and he would go out and twist the metal doohickey, and he'd be able to pick up like PBS several states over. So we used to watch like extremely grainy PBS from Cincinnati. And when he was doing that one day and he was kind of looking through stuff, a Colin Baker episode of Doctor Who came on. And it took him a minute to realize that it was the same show. And he got really into it, and he ended up joining the community, and he had a contact at Loose Cannon that would send him stuff. And so my dad just started trying to build up this collection of Doctor Who stories.
Mm.
He would like tape John Pertwee off PBS, really grainy. And then, like, one time he taped an episode of John Pertwee that was really grainy. And then he taped it somewhere else off a different station. And it was crystal clear, but they had edited it into a movie. So it was funny watching those versions of the episodes because it would be like right before the cliffhanger, it would switch to this super grainy video.
Uh-huh.
But my dad was really into collecting it and trying to watch it in order, even though a lot of the episodes in the 60s only have audio.
They just
Um,
found a few new ones on that note, which is
yes,
awesome.
yes. And by all accounts, and this is what's exciting, by all accounts, there's probably one or two more coming in the next year or two.
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of private collectors holding on to episodes,
Yeah.
so.
The one they just found is funny because usually people think of it as like the private collectors just hoarding stuff. In this case, the private collector just didn't know what he had because he
Mm.
bought a lot of used film for like the train stock footage because he liked collecting train stuff. And
Mm.
then it came with a box of Doctor Who stuff, and he did not open it. And when he died, the film group came in to go through his stuff and found they opened the box for the first time.
Yeah, that must have been quite the holy shit moment once they
Um,
realized.
my dad was one of the first customers to use a service called Netflix. That was back when
Mm.
you could rent DVDs, and he did this to rent. He would rent Doctor Who DVDs from Netflix. He would play them out and make a copy for home, and then send the DVD back. Fun fact: in America, that is completely legal. It is completely legal to do what I just said, which a lot of people don't know. So that we
Interesting.
had my dad built up a bootleg collection of Doctor Who DVDs. He had kind of screen recorded from Netflix, renting them on DVD. And yeah, I found it really interesting to watch the show, and I'd watch Tom Baker. And I actually have a memory. I said to Dad, "Hey, can we watch Doctor Who?" And Dad goes, "Oh yeah, do you want to watch a John Pertwee? Do you want to watch a Tom Baker?" And I said, we can watch one of the old ones. I know you like those." And he said, "Oh well, it's going to be in black and white. I know you don't like that. And I said, oh, that's fine. And he says, well, some of the episodes might be missing, so we're going to have to watch still images. And I said, yeah, that's fine. And it was like my dad was just really excited because it was the first time. Usually we complained about the show being in black and white or it just being still images, but that was the first time where I was like, yeah, I'll just watch it,
Yeah.
And then I remember in 2003 they announced the show was coming back, and my dad saw it on the news and he told me about it, and I got really excited. And my dad said, well, it's not going to last. He says they'll probably bring it back for one season. It's not going to stick around. And then it did. And yeah, so I have a very long relationship with Doctor Who. I am sad to admit that I am not fully caught up on the complete Disney era, just because since I've started doing YouTube and I talk about film and television, watching film and television gives me like FOMO. Like, oh, why aren't I making a video talking about this? Oh my God. So I have to really like put myself in the right mindset to watch stuff, and I just haven't seen all of the latest run. But yeah, Doctor Who has kind of been in my blood for a really long time. And I remember in elementary school, kids would accuse me of making the show up. Going into middle school, I was bullied for it. Then suddenly everyone was into it, but they were just into like the Tenet era. And so it felt like there was a language barrier there,
Yeah, you were like a real fan and they were like phony new fans. You were
I don't want to say it like that, but I remember, I try and talk to these guys and they'd be like, isn't Jackie Tyler such a vibe? And I was like, I don't know how to talk to you.
They said that back in the 2000s?
They said that in like the 2010s.
Oh, okay.
So that, when Doctor Who became big in America, during Matt Smith's second season, my memory is that they filmed an episode in America, it hit the news, and then people said, well, what's this thing then? What's this thing? They're filming in this British show in America. What is this show? And then everyone they watched the first season of Matt Smith, and then they started watching the Tennant and Eccleston runs. So like when I was like a freshman in high school, I suddenly knew a bunch of people who I had known my entire life who were getting into this show that I was always into. But again, there was this weird thing where like I didn't know how to interact. Like I was too deep. I knew what looms were. Like I couldn't. I remember one time there was this guy and he was having this conversation. He was like, there's an episode of the Matt Smith era where someone has what is the Captain Jack watch thing? The vortex manipulator. And they say that, I think they say something about the headless monks or something. And he was like, well, Captain Jack is a vortex manipulator. And he becomes the face of Bo. So did he get decapitated by the headless monks? And that's how he became the face of Bo? And I was like, have you ever seen Time Lash? I want to tell you about Time Lash. I just didn't know how to talk to these people. But yeah, I've always watched the show, and I was always a hipster, being like, well, the new series. There's a lot of things in the new series that's not, I think, perfectly how the show should be done, and I still feel that way. But when we hit Capaldi was the first time in the show's run where I was like, this is the best Doctor, because I never would have said a modern Doctor was the best Doctor before Capaldi. I would have said like, I think it would be Colin Baker, Paul McGann, and then maybe Matt Smith. But it's like as soon as Capaldi was the role, I was like, no, it's kind of done. Like no one has been more prepared to be the Doctor than Peter Capaldi.
Yeah,
and I still feel that way.
Personally, I'm a big Eccleston guy, but I can definitely see why Capaldi would be the only new Who Doctor that would appeal to like a classic Who fan.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting that so your favorite Doctors are Paul McGann and Colin Baker.
That's what I would have said in middle school. I think.
Okay.
I do think it's ironic that that's how my dad got introduced to the show. Because
those are the two least popular Doctors of the classic series.
It just always confused me because the discussion on the 1996 TV movie would be like, well, no person who saw the 1996 TV movie became a Doctor Who fan because of that, and I'd be like, that's how my hot take is like, you guys don't understand. You can look up the scheduling for the Doctor Who TV movie. They scheduled it against I think it was this talk show hosted by someone. I think it was the Rosie O'Donnell talk show, and this was an extremely popular show, and that's where they scheduled the movie. In my opinion, they wanted the movie to flop because the movie cost like $2 million or something. But I think people overstate. I think the movie doesn't make sense 100%, but I think it's actually a very fun story. It's definitely not the best Doctor Who pilot episode. I just think people hate on it too much. But yeah, I always felt like I liked what they had in mind with Colin Baker. I think I would rate him lower now that I've seen a similar idea done with Capaldi, but they finished it, like they did it.
Yeah. I think Colin Baker would be thought of as one of the best if they'd gotten to finish his arc, but unfortunately, we don't live in that timeline. And same with McGann. I'm always fascinated to imagine what would have happened if the pilot movie had been picked up and the New Who, as we think of it, had started in '96 with that sort of Americanized style that's in the movie.
I always try and picture versions of Super Wholock for different eras. So it's like the logic has to be two shows that one show is Doctor Who and then another show made by like the same group, usually the BBC, in the same country. And then there has to be a third show that has nothing to do with the other two shows and is made in a different country. So like 1960s is Hartnell Doctor Who, the Peter Cushing Sherlock Holmes BBC TV show, and then Dark Shadows, the American vampire show. That's the 60s version of Super Wholock. And I feel like it's so easy to imagine with Paul McGann's Doctor that there's a fandom of people who are really into Doctor Who, the 90s TV show, and really into the X-Files. Now, in this circumstance, the X-Files is the Sherlock show because it's the show made in the same country, America/Canada, and it's the show made by the same group, Fox. So in that circumstance, the X-Files is Sherlock. And I had figured out what the third one was ages ago, but I can't remember.
I thought you were going to say Buffy the Vampire Slayer because that was 97 and that ended up influencing New Who a lot. So
yeah, I think that's fair. I definitely think that I can easily picture like a Paul McGann X-Files crossover. That's my hot take.
Well, if Russell had gotten his way, New Who would have had a bunch of crossovers. I think he wanted a crossover with Star Trek at one point, and
he still wants it.
He wanted a crossover with Harry Potter.
Yeah,
like he wanted a J.K. Rowling episode.
Thank God he didn't do that. Well, my hot take, every time Russell mentions or sneaks into an episode a reference to his obsession with Doctor Who and Star Trek having a crossover, it kind of bums me out because if there's any one show that deserves a crossover with Doctor Who, it's Red Dwarf. Like a Red Dwarf Doctor Who movie would be the peak. You can imagine Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor kind of on the Red Dwarf interacting with Lister. I think just you can picture it so easily. It would be so perfect. But instead it's like, no, we got to do Star Trek, Picard, Generation 7, and Doctor Who. And it's like, I don't care about that.
Yeah, just take the two popular sci-fis and mash them together because they're popular.
Yeah.
I think Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy would go well, especially since that was created by Douglas Adams, who was a Doctor Who writer and wrote some of the best.
I think there's a case to be made there. I think the only hang up would be explaining Earth, like if you did a multiverse,
it could be like two different universes colliding.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, of course, in the one book, every Earth and every universe is destroyed, but that book's not that good.
Well, I mean, I guess, we've definitely established your relationship with the show and that you're a longtime fan. How much of the Disney era have you seen?
This is really embarrassing. This is really embarrassing because I've been spoiled so much that I've been bitching about stuff in the new season that I don't like. Which I feel is hypocritical, but I need to watch the Christmas special. And then the latest one? The latest one, the Christmas special, and then the whole latest season. But I've been spoiled enough that like for most of the episodes, I know the things people are pissed off about, and I'm like, yeah, that is pretty stupid. But I that's why I was kind of worried. I was like, I just want to be clear, I haven't actually watched the new season yet.
I don't think you have to. As long as you've seen series 14/season 1, I think that's enough to understand the problems with this era.
And I have 100 hot takes about this. I mean, it is really.
Yeah.
Here's my first hot take. Russell T Davies is a man with very, very bad taste who often makes exceptionally good television. Even when he makes good television, he's still a man with very, very bad taste in things. And I think that's an important thing to start with. That's just my opinion. I think even in Russell T Davies eras that I like, I can point at something and be like, this coral TARDIS interior is really tacky, you know? And I think that detail alone to me explains so many things about this era that where it just was going in the wrong direction, where you kind of wanted somebody to go in there and be like, Russell, that's really stupid. You have very bad taste in ideas, you know.
Well, I think in his first era, he didn't have like absolute creative control over it in the same way, and he was more likely to listen to producers that might have shot ideas down, or even Tenet, who shot down the J.K. Rowling crossover idea. I think it's sort of a George Lucas effect,
and he wasn't delivered like a giant truck filled with money.
Yeah.
I just think that's an important detail that even when Russell was making great television, even when he was making great Doctor Who, I think he had a bad taste in things, and a lot of the things that I don't like about this era is like, yeah, it's just that Russell T Davies wanted to do this, and someone needed to stop him.
Well, yeah, I mean, the more I look back at his first era, as much as I still like it overall, it definitely still is full of writing that I'm not a huge fan of, especially in the finales with Deus Ex Machinas and
the big thing about
a push towards like melodrama at certain moments that I, as much as I think the classic series is obviously very flawed, I much prefer the vibes of the classic series, if that makes sense. I really prefer what it's trying to do and how it writes the character of the Doctor.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of presenting the Doctor and the characters, you're going to get your peak in mid Troughton, because there's this good mix there where the writers are trying to like do arcs with the characters. Like Jamie has this arc of like he's clearly in love with Victoria, and that's how Fraser Hines plays it, and then he has to like move on, and he's like, it's a coming of age story. And the Doctor's trying to do all these mischievous things. So the writers are still doing interesting stuff. Patrick Troughton is also trying to build the character in a fun way. And then the other characters, you literally get to watch these characters, you know, who don't know anything about our modern society. A Victorian woman, and then a Scotsman from ancient times learn everything and change completely as people.
Yeah.
And part of that is the writing, and then part of that is the actors putting that into their characterization, kind of inserting the vibes they have with each other in real life into their performances. And then just the longevity and the intense, like, you know, these characters by the time that era's over, because it's like 45 hours a season.
Yeah.
And I think the further we get into the classic series, the more it's like, the more you lose that, definitely, where I think especially by the frankly by the Davison era, where it's like, you know, a lot of the scripts feel like filler. There's like a funny moment in the Colin Baker era where Perry references an episode she wasn't in, which doesn't make sense.
Like, as script editors go, I think Christopher Bidmead and Eric Sayward are largely responsible for kind of like and obviously John Nathan Turner as well, for kind of intentionally sucking emotion and characterization out of the show to try to replace it with pure science fiction plot lines. It's all about the plot, not really about the who, but the what. And I feel like that is largely what caused the 80s to suffer. But I like what you were saying about the characterization in the 60s, in that it's there, but they allow it to be subtle. You know, it's not like New Who where everything's in your face and completely unsubtle. And if they're doing an arc, they'll beat you over the head with it. It just sort of, you know, it exists naturally in the story without, you know, like
I also
being
think
larger than life.
Because early Classic Who tried to focus on like the companion is the main character, in my opinion. You know, Barbara and Ian are the main characters at the start of the show, for instance. I think because of that, I don't know if it was intentional or if it's just a change in how people want to write these things, but there's a sense of like, they're like, Leela is a companion who is completely different from Sarah Jane. Zoe is very different from Victoria. Some of the companions are from the past, some of them are aliens, some of them are Time Lords, some of them are from the future. There's different kinds of like culture shock and coming to understand different things about traveling in space and time.
Yeah,
whereas
I
in the
love that.
revived era, I think it's a major hang up, that every time it's like, oh, it's usually a woman who's
from the current year,
usually in her 20s, and it's always like, I think to myself, why do they do that? And the answer I always come back around to is because every once in a while they want to make a Ghostbusters reference, and that's honestly what I think it is. I think modern writers really, really rely on pop culture references to fill like little like moments in the script where a joke should be. And I think because it's hard to do that with a character who's from like Victorian England, I think that's one of the big reasons modern Doctor Who doesn't do that.
But the thing is, you could have the Doctor make those references, or if you have a character from their time period, it would be really charming to see them encounter pop culture from the future, and then as they learn more, start making references as they learn. I think that would work well.
This reminds me of they just found Dalek Master Plan Part 1. There's a moment in Dalek Master Plan has a really funny thing to me in like a meta way. Spoilers for like a 65-year-old piece of television. But Katarina, the companion who was in the TARDIS at the start of that story, she gets killed off. She kind of sacrifices herself. There's a moment in the first episode where, last time I rewatched it, I said, oh, you can feel the moment the writers decide to kill her. And it's a moment where she's from like, I think she's like from Rome or something. I can't remember. She's from some ancient society. And the Doctor goes, I'm going to go explore. Look, here's the TARDIS key, lock the ship up. And Katarina goes, what is a key? And the Doctor has to explain to Katarina what a key is. And that's the moment where you can just feel the writers going, we're going to kill this girl. We're not doing this. But anyways, that has nothing to do with the Inshutigapwa era. But yeah, so like, yeah,
I guess just broadly, what did you think of it from what you saw?
Let me finish saying one thing about the thing that's fascinating about the first Russell T Davies era to me is that there is a lot of elements where I always say if Stephen Moffat had done that in his era, people would still be mad about it, in a way of being like, well, Stephen Moffat is a racist, he's a sexist. I think it's interesting that like the companions in the Stephen Moffat era often have more autonomy than the companions in the Russell T Davies era. It's much less, you can picture like Amy and Rory and Clara, they all go on to have jobs and lives, which in my opinion makes for more interesting stories that can be more varied. But in the Davison era, you literally have to choose between living full time with this madman and, checking home every once in a while, or just having your regular life. And I think that's a compelling difference where if it was swapped, I think people would say it's sexist. I also think the first black companion having the bulk of her story arc surrounding that the Doctor won't stop telling her about the pretty blonde white woman that he was traveling with right before her. I think it's like, damn, if Stephen Moffat had did not, people would still be really mad about that. And I think just there's little things like that where when you look back, you go, oh yeah, I think he did bungle the Martha storyline. I think there are little clues. I think the difference is that they're satisfying experiences. I saw someone say, well, we were all enjoying these seasons until we got to that finale. And I was like, it's kind of like if someone says to you, hey, how was your flight? You go on a trip and someone says, how was your flight? And you say, oh, well, the first flight was really nice. The in-flight service was great. Then I had a layover, and then I had the second flight, and I watched an in-flight movie, and I actually really enjoyed it. It might be one of my favorite movies ever. And then the third flight, the engine went out, we spiraled, we crashed into the ocean, and I had to be rescued. It was, it was pretty shitty flight experience. And they'd go, well, those first two flights seems like they went fine. So why, So why is that impacting your view of your flight experience? It's like, because I wanted them to stick the goddamn landing, okay? And it's important to me that they didn't. And that's how I feel about, my biggest disagreement, and when it comes to like, I call it the Reddit comments section Doctor Who take. Anytime Reddit is on Doctor Who, anytime Doctor Who is on the homepage of Reddit, you can go down to the comments section and there'll be like 20 people all just repeating the same hot takes that they've been recycling since like Capaldi's first season. They're like the correct hot takes to say. And they're always like, well, Stephen Moffat, he's a good writer, but he doesn't do good story arcs. He doesn't do good finales. And I fundamentally disagree. Because Stephen Moffat is the only showrunner on the show where people enjoy his eras significantly more after they're over, because the finales are actually kind of good. And I think the difference is that Stephen Moffat recognizes, and you know, this contributes to why Russell T Davies finales aren't as good in my opinion. Stephen Moffat contextualizes the like, oh, everyone wants to see the sci-fi nonsense. They want to see lasers. They want to see the Doctor save a day by pressing 4 buttons in a specific order. They want to see big retcons about the Doctor's origins and this and this and that. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is the characters. And so his finales often subvert by circling back around to the characters. For instance, the hybrid storyline in the Capaldi era, the base, as far as I'm concerned, the hybrid storyline in the Capaldi era is inspired by the retcon in the 1996 TV movie that the Doctor is half human. The entire drama for the fan base was we didn't know if that was going to be canonized because the Doctor worrying about who's the hybrid of 2 species. The subtext is that he, according to one source, is half human. And so everyone spent the whole season being like, are they going to canonize that, or are they going to make that important? And then in the final episode, does she call herself Me by the end?
Yeah.
Is that what she? Yeah. Me says to him, she directly goes for that theory. She says, you know, a Time Lord who's half human, half Gallifreyan could be the hybrid. And she basically directly says, are you half human? Are you half human? Could you be the hybrid? And the Doctor says, it doesn't really matter. And then they get into the character elements of his relationship with Clara and how this toxic relationship built out of some fortified love is literally ripping the universe apart. And I remember at the time everyone being like, I didn't like where they went with that. And it's because they wanted to see the sci-fi Gallifrey shooting lasers at bad guys nonsense. They didn't want it to become this actual introspective look at like the end of a traumatic relationship built on that over emphasized sense of love. And when you go straight from that to the Chibnall run, where you have the Timeless Child episode, where the whole of one finale is just a lore dump that's really stupid about the Timeless Child, and then they don't even. Yaz ends that era not knowing about the main story arc of that era. Do you know how much that pisses me off? There's no scene in that era where Yaz interacts with the Timeless Child storyline in any way. In every season of the Whittaker era, the storyline is the same. At the start of the story, Jodie Whittaker has something she doesn't want to tell her companions. Her companions are getting fed up because they feel like the Doctor is keeping stuff from them. And then at the end of the season, the Doctor decides that she's going to stop keeping things from them until in that episode something gets introduced that the Doctor wants to keep from the companions, and then it loops back around in the next season. It really drives me insane. And they're always going for that sci-fi flashing lasers at stuff without considering how this actually affects the characters. And I think that's a massive drop-off in terms of if we're just talking about Chris Chibnall Doctor Who. And I think you see that reinforced into the Disney era, partially like fortified by the increase in budget.
I mean, I get the point you're making with Moffat finales versus like Chibnall finales, and I definitely prefer Moffat's finales, though I get the sense that you probably like them more than I do. Like personally, yeah. I like the Big Bang and I like the Dr. Falls. I think those two are very good. I don't really like any of the others, especially The Name of the Doctor and The Wedding of River Song. I don't like those. Know,
to be fair, I mean, Moffat was killing himself in 2013. I mean, it's it's insane to go back and look at how much, and he was also running Sherlock. But as far as I'm concerned, Series 7B might as well be a series of shorts setting up the first Capaldi year. But yeah, I don't think I'm not a big Name of the Doctor fan either, although I do think it's cool. I do think like the scene of Hartnell stealing the TARDIS is cool. I rewatch that every once in a while. But I just think that's definitely an issue I have. Now here's my big hot take. I find a lot of Doctor Who fans don't agree with me on this when it comes to the Ncuti Gatwa era.
Okay.
So they separated. First of all, I don't think they should have done this. They put the Christmas special where you meet this Doctor in like a different place than the rest of the show. So if I remember correctly, like on Disney Plus, you wouldn't click on, if you clicked on Doctor Who, the Ncuti Gatwa era, it didn't start with that Christmas special. So if you were going to get into Doctor Who because you heard the new reboot is great, then you wouldn't actually start with the episode where the characters get introduced. I think that was a misstep, but it's not the biggest misstep.
They later fixed that, but at first it was Space Babies, and I think it took them a few weeks to put Church in.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but I do remember checking, and after a while they did fix it.
Space Babies might be one of the biggest mistakes in the history of Doctor Who. That's
There's
how
not
I
a
feel
single
about it.
person that doesn't hold that opinion, like anywhere.
Really?
It's crazy.
Because whenever I put
no
it on
one
Twitter,
likes Space Babies.
Whenever I put that on Twitter, people are like, well, Doctor Who's supposed to be silly. And I'm like, yeah, but you know, the Christopher Eccleston run didn't start on Fear Her. You know what I mean? Like, it's a bad... That should have been in the middle of the goddamn season. They should have started off with the cosplaying episode, in my opinion.
I don't think it should have been in the season at all. Because like, Doctor Who episodes, the silly kids ones, including Fear Her, have always been the episodes that everybody, including kids, because I remember holding this opinion as a kid, and my friends holding the same opinions, those are the episodes people don't like.
Yeah,
I feel like there's no reason to put them in at all.
Well, I don't know. I do think there's the element of like, if you want to make 12 episodes, in my opinion, that should be the minimum for how many Doctor Who episodes get made per season, first of all. Second of all, I do think filler episodes should exist. I think they're important.
Oh, yeah. No, like, I love me a good bottle episode, but I feel like writers will, like Russell, and I think the Chibnall did this too, they'll intentionally limit themselves when they're writing kiddie episodes.
Yes.
In a way that really harms their writing.
I also think... I just remember we put it on, and I remember when we watched the Christmas episode, I was super embarrassed during the musical scene. Doing a musical sequence isn't a inherently idea that it's not something that's impossible to turn out good. The song felt like Russell T Davies wrote the lyrics and no one rewrote them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's really cringy, and that's the same reason I don't like There's Always a Twist at the End, because it feels like Russell T Davies wrote some lyrics down and then someone turned that into a song and no one said, Russell, you have very bad taste in things. This is terrible. But that's the specific thing. That's why I start off by saying Russell T Davies has bad taste in things. Russell T Davies saying, oh my God, we've got all the money in the world. We can make whatever we want. Let's make baby geniuses. That's how I'll introduce a whole new generation to Doctor Who. We'll make baby geniuses. Yeah. And it's like, Russell, are you out of your goddamn mind? Why would you start your new era of Doctor Who on baby geniuses? Like, it really, really bothers me, because I was I have a photo you might be able to find on my Twitter, but I have a photo of me that I took of myself watching the episode, and I'm literally just like my mouth is just agape, and I'm just like staring at it like, oh my God, like, what am I... Like, not in a way where I'm like, this should never be what Doctor Who is, but I'm like, what are they doing? Why are they starting on this? I would never show this to one of my friends. And it's episode 1. How did they not understand that making episode 1 something that you want to show to people you know is important? Like, the fact that I would be embarrassed for any of my friends to see... Oh, here's Doctor Who. This is the thing Quinton's really into. Here's Space Babies. It's like, I would be so fucking embarrassed to show that to somebody. And this is the big thing with the Jodie Whittaker era and the Ncuti Gatwa era. They are both, whether it's the intention of the producers or not, they were both marketed to the fans as a whole new start to the show. You can start watching add episode 1, and it's going to be a whole self-contained era made by a new group of people. You're not going to need to know who River Song is. You're not going to need all this lore stuff. And they start doing that, and then somehow 1 or 2 seasons in, there is just a massive, massive twist that where the significance of it only makes sense if you've seen The Brain of Morbius.
Yeah.
It's like, if you haven't seen The Brain of Morbius, you're not going to understand what they're going on about. And it's like, well, then how is this the era that's for new fans? And there are Jodie Whittaker fans. Jodie Whittaker has shooters. There are Jodie Whittaker fans that you'll encounter all the time. I never encounter the ones who are like, yeah, I love that Brain of Morbius retcon. It's like, it's just this weird thing. And Russell T Davies retcons specifically do this, where it's a big retcon where if you don't know a ton of the lore, you're going to be confused. You're going to say, I don't understand the significance of this. If you know all the lore, it's going to piss you off because they're just going to get it. They're just going to intentionally get it all wrong. Yeah. So who is it for? You know what I mean? It's just, it drives me insane. Who is this for?
Those are my exact thoughts on it. And it's like, or like a good example. Oh wait, no, this is something in season 2 actually. So I don't know. Are you aware that the fugitive doctor makes a brief appearance in an episode?
I am aware of that. That was one of the good things I heard about.
Well, the thing is, that's another case where you wouldn't understand that at all unless, of course, you've watched the Jodie Whittaker era. But it doesn't make sense in the episode because it's not actually the fugitive doctor. It's Ncuti Gatwa's doctor talking, like recounting things that happened when he was the fugitive, and then they just visually turn him into her just to show her. But it doesn't make any sense because he's not supposed to remember anything from that time in his life, because the whole thing is his memories got wiped, but the episode just ignores that fact and has him just start talking about things he did as the fugitive doctor. And so a lot of people are like, wait, what? Did he open the fob watch? This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's really weird. I mean,
literally just doesn't appeal to anyone.
I've seen enough of the Omega shit. Excuse me. I've seen enough of the Omega stuff to be like, what is happening?
It's genuinely even worse than what they did with Sutek.
It's like, if you haven't seen the 3 Doctors, you're not going to know who Omega is. If you have seen the 3 Doctors, you're going to be like, this is fucking wrong. Like, like, why are you putting emphasis on the lore? It feels like I'm watching Zack Snyder Doctor Who. You know what I mean? Where they'll be like, what's the bad guy in the first Superman movie? The first Batman v Superman. It's like they make the giant mutated thing.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a moment where he says like, we'll call it Galactus or something. And everyone was like, what? I don't think it was exactly that, but it was that big moment of name dropping this comic book thing when referencing a giant mutated knob of stuff that looks nothing like anything that's ever been in the comics. That's what it reminds me of.
But yeah, I think Sutek has to be the most infamous example from this era, and you would have seen that of bringing something back just to try to bank on nostalgia and name recognition, but not doing it in a way where it works for new viewers, but also not doing it in a way where it works for old viewers because it's not in line with how the character is supposed to be.
Yes, I mean, if you had spoken to me 5 years ago, and you had said Russell T Davies is going to work on a new run of the show, and Stephen Moffat is sometimes going to work on it, he's going to advise Russell, and he's going to, in the first finale, Sutek is going to come back. I would have said,
that sounds perfect.
I would have said there's no way they can fuck that up, especially if they get the original actor back. No matter how old he is, which they did, and they still fucked it up.
All the ingredients are there, but Russell doesn't seem to realize that it's not just about having the pieces, it's about arranging them in the right order. It's about cooking up the ingredients right. Like where this era really fails is in execution consistently, even if ideas are cool.
One disagreement there's little things that a lot of fans disagree with about where they should have gone and what they did. I've had conversations with people about the whole Egyptian thing. When I was growing up as a kid, I never thought about like, is doing a bunch of aliens where their spaceships look like pyramids or whatever, is that cultural appropriation? I never thought about that shit.
The Doctor calling it cultural appropriation in that episode, I thought is kind of odd.
Yeah, it's really cringe, but like there's a bigger issue than just that one line to me, where it's like When I was a kid, I didn't think about like, is Davros ableist and that kind of thing. So I understand looking back as an adult to be like, okay, it makes sense. Davros is actually a great example of Russell T Davies doing something that on paper is a fine idea, but doing it so fucking bad that it just makes me mad. Do you know what the cool thing about Davros is as a character?
Like his origin or how he came to be how he is?
Nope. The cool thing. Well, don't mean to be.
I mean, I think that's cool personally, but that's
I think the cool part about Davros is when you're a kid and you're getting into Doctor Who, you can sit down and watch Genesis of the Daleks, then you can watch Destiny of the Daleks, then you can watch the R Word trilogy. I hate to call it that, but it's fitting. You watch the R Word trilogy, and then you watch the modern episodes with Davros, and it feels like a
cozy story.
The continuity leads from one story to the other often.
Yeah.
Where it's like the Davros will be unfrozen and then 5 years before he was frozen. And it's really compelling and interesting. And he comes out and says, okay, I'm doing an episode for children in need. It's going to be like a 3-minute episode. And in the story, the Doctor accidentally goes back in time and changes the Genesis of the Dalek story so that Davros is not in a wheelchair. And it's like, and then he says, it's so dated, so bad. And it's like, on paper, I think doing some kind of story where Davros is rejuvenated and he's no longer this potentially dated, kind of iffy trope, I think that's fine.
But he didn't do that.
But doing it in a way specifically where it's like time travel shenanigans where Davros was never that. And also doing it in a mini episode. No one will ever watch that episode in sequence when binging Doctor Who. Yeah. No one's ever going to stop after the final Jodie Whittaker and go, oh, wait, I got to watch that fucking weird Children in Need 2-minute skit about Davros. No one's going to do that. So why would that be the context where you're rewriting the character? And I was talking about this with friends online. I honest to God think Russell T Davies is a compulsive liar. Because when you see quotes, when he puts out quotes explaining things he's done, I actually think, like, 75% of the time, I'm like, you are lying. That is not why you did that. You clearly just lied for no reason. Because he'll just come out and say, like, oh, yeah, well, Jodie's outfit, we didn't want to show a man in Jodie's outfit. And I'm like, that's clearly not the reason. You just like lying in interviews. I don't know if that makes me sound insane, but I actually believe he might be a compulsive liar.
Why do you think he changed the outfit? What do you think the real reason was?
Well, someone told me there's a behind-the-scenes clip from the from the End of Time, where he's kind of watching the first Matt Smith scene, and he's like revolted that Matt Smith is in David Tennant's outfit, and he's saying, "Oh,
yeah, I just saw it recently, actually. Yeah.
It feels so wrong. That's David's outfit. It feels so wrong that he's in that." And I think Russell, when taking over the show, he was like sitting to himself and he was gleefully like thinking back, well, there's a lot of things in Doctor Who people don't recognize. The first regeneration, the outfit changed too. And when the fifth Doctor regenerated, his shoes changed. You can watch that in the episode. It's true. When the fourth Doctor becomes the fifth Doctor, his shoes change. So he said, well, clearly the outfit can regenerate. So I'm just going to do that because I don't want to show David Tennant in Jodie's outfit. Because I also think if it was going to be a 5-second scene and they had to make a whole new outfit, it probably was like, we're not doing that. But I think that was it. I think he specifically was like, I'm going to start a whole dialogue about how, well, if William Hartnell's outfit can change when he regenerates, why can't Jodie Whittaker's? I think that's what it was. And I think he wanted I think someone asked him about an interview and he compulsively made up a lie to generate discussion. I truly believe that.
I guess I try to be charitable and take someone's words at face value. So I don't want to necessarily say I think he's lying, but at the same time, I don't think you're wrong either in asserting that he might have had like an ulterior motive or like another reason that he wanted to do that. Because obviously the reason they changed in the first regeneration is because it was the early 60s and they hadn't decided the rules of the show yet. Like early Doctor was full of all kinds of weird stuff. Like what is it? Transmigration. The third Doctor has the power to just make objects appear like in one episode and then like never again.
That's kind of baller. But yeah, so the backstory of why it's so magical is originally the Doctor was going to regenerate during the Celestial Toymaker. Hartnell was having health issues, so in the Celestial Toymaker, through magic, the Toymaker makes him invisible, so all his dialogue in that, when he's invisible, is ADR. And so the idea was, throughout the episode, occasionally the Doctor was made visible and then made invisible again. So the idea was originally, at the end of the episode, the toy maker's going to make him visible again, but it's going to be a different actor. And it's going to be like, oh, the toy maker did a little trickery. But it just didn't end up lining up that way. He stayed on a little longer. But originally, it was literally just going to be bullshit magic from the Celestial Toy Maker. And then they eventually said, you know what? Let's just have it be something that the TARDIS does, maybe. And I think it kind of works more in that sense because he has that big cape on and he takes the cape off. I don't know. But clearly that's not relevant to the modern era. But
it's interesting how different the show would have been if they'd done that. They would have had to keep coming up with different in-universe excuses for why he changes instead of just having there be that base idea of regeneration.
There's a lot of interesting what ifs when it comes to Doctor Who. I think one of the most interesting and under-discussed is Shada. Most people would not say Shada isn't canon. Most people would be like, well, they finished the episode, you can watch it. If Shada had been finished, I think Doctor Who would be a drastically different show than it is today, because there's a large amount of stuff that's established in Shada by Douglas Adams, where it's like, if that had been part of the on-screen canon when like the novels were launching off, the in-universe logic of the series would be completely different.
Guilty admission, I actually haven't seen Shada, so I'm not familiar with all of its.
There's a scene in Shada. First of all, there's a Time Lord in Shada called Chronotis, and he's hiding on Earth. And the Doctor reveals that when he was a boy, he was obsessed with a renegade Time Lord that was considered just a myth named Sally Avon. And Sally Avon was the only Time Lord who had the ability of hypnotize people in a way that he could actually go into their mind and like move stuff around, which obviously the Doctor does all the time in the revived era. The other big scene in Shada is there's a scene where the Doctor is on a spaceship and someone else has stolen the TARDIS and he needs to get to a planet really quickly. So he starts explaining to the ship how to turn itself into a TARDIS. And then the ship develops the ability to dematerialize.
That's fascinating. I didn't even know that.
He talks a computer, because the spaceship has an intelligent computer, and he explains to it how to become a TARDIS. And the lore of TARDISes would be so completely different if fans had always had that scene during, the last however many decades of the show. And I just think that's very compelling.
Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of wished that Douglas Adams stayed on a bit longer because I'm a big Douglas Adams enthusiast and I love City of Death. So
yeah, I mean, I think he would have been unhappy and wasted on the first run of John Nathan Turner. I don't think he would have done well on series.
Oh, I'm not saying I think John Nathan Turner should have come on at all.
Oh yeah, I mean,
yeah. Because that wouldn't have worked at all. They had completely counter visions for the show.
So I have mixed feelings about Ncuti Gatwa as like being cast as the Doctor, which I feel like a lot of people are not daring enough to have.
Yeah, I've definitely, as time's gone on, I've definitely have been less charitable. I do think he's good when it comes to the energetic and charismatic parts, but the way that he plays anything emotional isn't great.
Whenever it's a Moffat script, you can almost feel Peter Capaldi kind of leaning out through him, which I really like. Like in the Bomb episode, I was like, oh, I really like his performance. I really like this Doctor. Russell did this thing where if he wanted an episode to be significant for some reason, he would just have the Doctor say that. So at the end of Space Babies, the Doctor goes like, that was a very important adventure that was very different and very groundbreaking. And it's like, fuck you. You know it wasn't. You can't just have the Doctor say that, right? But I think the other time is that Russell would sometimes just write the Doctor like emphasizing the lore and that it is emotional and that it is compelling. And Ncuti Gatwa didn't know what to do with that, so he would just cry. And the scene in the one episode where he's like, it split me in half, I can't go through that again. I just posted this on Twitter. It reminds me of the scene and I Think You Should Leave, where he's like in his car, Robinson, and he's like, I don't know how this shit works and I'm scared. And I think that's just what that always reminds me of.
I would love to see an episode of Doctor Who written by Tim Robinson, honestly.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
That would be weird, but weirdly intuitive combination.
I think the big thing that drove me insane about this era was that, like, and it's hard to discuss because certain fans are like, well, clearly that was intentional and clearly it's very subversive. And I was like, I don't care. It's annoying and off-putting.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You can't, something isn't good automatically just because it's subversive. Like,
there's like 3 or 4 times in Russell T Davies 2 era where something will happen and then the show gives like 4 or 5 different explanations as per what that meant. And it drives me nuts. By Regenerations, the 73 yards episode, all the stuff with Ruby, it's like the show just gives like there's like 3 or 4 different interpretations of By Regeneration you can pull from that era, because every time they talk about By Regeneration, it has a different definition, and I think that is not good show running. I think it's very annoying. And I also think I am not fully entrenched. What is it called? 73 yards?
Yeah, it is.
I'm not fully convinced that episode doesn't make sense on purpose. I know he kind of hinted that he made it not make sense on purpose. I'm not convinced. I think they just screwed it up and then tried to make it seem artsy. That episode really annoys me. And I don't know if that's a common take with people you speak to. It's consistent with that whole thing of like, in the same vein of Russell there, I haven't seen the episode, but there's a scene where the Doctor goes like, oh, the Master's genetic bomb, it made all Time Lords infertile. And it's like, that's not what happened. Why are you just making up a different thing? Like, you know what I mean?
It's just relevant to that story, so it's just kind of a way for him to tie things together, but it's kind of like, it's like gaslighting the audience of what we've seen.
But it almost feels like, and Chris Chibnall had this issue to a lesser extent, it almost feels like Russell has like memory loss, where he only vaguely remembers every episode of Doctor Who he's ever seen, including the ones he made. Wrote.
Yeah.
So if he's going to reference them, and Terrence Dicks had the same thing, right? There's a ton of continuity errors in the classic era because Terrence Dicks just fumbles his own memory of episodes. I would argue the entirety of every Troughton appearance is kind of weird because of that. In the 2 Doctors, I would argue that Jamie and the 2nd Doctor are written like the 4th Doctor and Leela 100%. And it only makes sense if you look at it from that perspective. But that, it's still a problem, in my opinion, that just every time Russell references an episode, you're like, wow, you kind of vaguely remember that episode, don't you, Russell? There was something Russell said in an interview that really ticked me off. That
was it the generate content thing, or
no? Actually, it was about. He was talking about one of my favorite, like, odd pieces of continuity from the classic era. He said in an interview, you can find this in Doctor Who magazine or something. He says, "There's some random episode of the William Hartnell era where the Doctor says that if he takes an aspirin, it'll kill him."
Right.
And a writer brought that up to me, and I said, well, that's not really necessarily a part of our Doctor Who, of our Whoniverse. That doesn't we don't have to obey that. And first of all, it's a John Pertwee episode, which there's this funny thing you can notice where Russell T Davies and Moffat, they're always like putting Hartnell down and then like putting Troughton up. So I don't know how he made that mistake. But so there's a scene in the John Pertwee era where the Doctor has been like poisoned or something. I can't remember the exact context, but he's like weak. He's laying in bed. He's sweating. It's like he might die. And Joe tries to give him an aspirin. And he says like, is completely different biology. I am not a human. That could kill me. And that comes back around in the 1996 TV movie, which is filled with extensive pointless continuity to the classic series, where the Doctor specifically says the reason the regeneration was different this time is because they gave him anesthesia. Because he was given anesthesia during the surgery, it screwed up the regeneration. That he says that in the movie,
right? And
it's just such a small piece of world building to be like, yeah, the doctor's biology is different. If you give him aspirin, it's not going to work the way it's supposed to. And if he's like weak, he might just die from this poison you gave him. So I don't understand, you know, just the dismissiveness of being like, well, whatever, we'll do our own thing. I think that mentality, you can see it all over the like Susan arc, which in my opinion is one of the worst ideas anyone has ever come up with Doctor Who. And if you're going to take away one thing from, you know, whoever's watching this, if you're going to take away one thing to represent how bad this run is, the final episode of the show was heavily re-edited and refilmed and rewritten at the last minute, by all accounts probably because the era wasn't going to continue and they didn't know if they could, if, you know, when and if they're making more episodes and if this Doctor was going to stick around. I think they still don't know. And so they changed everything and they deleted a bunch of scenes, including a scene with Carol Ann Ford and blah, 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 blah. And so everyone complains and moans and says, oh, I want to see that original cut. I want to see that original version. The original plot to the story was that in the future, the Doctor has a daughter, and that daughter will one day have a daughter who will be Susan from the classic era, which is this one of the stupidest ideas I've ever heard. And no one likes the idea. So we spend all our times bemoaning that this thing was cut that none of us like. Like, that's how bad they fumbled this era, that we are complaining that they went with the second worst option in, you know, that they went with the first worst option instead of the second worst option. That's how low our expectations are at this point.
Well, it's not even that he's going to have a daughter in the future. It's like there's the kid from Space Babies, Poppy, like becomes his daughter, and then that would have been his daughter, which makes even less sense. So Russell would have found a way to tie his Baby Geniuses episode into one of the most important pieces of the show's lore. The Baby Geniuses kid would have been Susan's mother and the Doctor's daughter.
I love Susan. I love the Hartnell era. I've always wanted a story where Susan comes back. I hope to God, if it happens, it's not written by Russell.
Yeah.
I just love Susan's character. And I've always thought, you know, Carol Ann Ford is a good actress and she knows that character so well. I've always wanted to see the character come back, but I don't want it to be written by someone who actively is like, well, you don't need to watch the Hartnell era, you know, and if they introduce some continuity in that era, I don't care. You know, I want it to be someone who cares about the character. And there's actually a funny story about Carol Ann Ford on a similar note. John Nathan Turner wanted the Doctor to be asexual, which to some extent I agree with. I don't think the Doctor should be boning his companions who are teenagers. Hot take.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
So John Nathan Turner wanted the Doctor to be asexual, but he felt this way to the extent that when he learned that the Doctor had a granddaughter, he was like, well, she's probably adopted or something, you know? So in the Five Doctors, when Susan shows up, in the script said Susan sees the first Doctor and she says, Doctor. And when Carol Ann Ford was filming the episode, she was like, she would say grandfather. Like, do you not, have you not seen the show? I would call him grandfather. And in fact, the novelization of the story is based on the script. So there's like a weird line where Susan decides that she's going to call him doctor just to see how it feels coming out of her mouth. But in the original episode, she was supposed to only call him doctor, and Carol Ann Ford insisted on calling the doctor grandfather.
Yeah.
And then one of the first things they do in the episode is they sprain her ankle, because that happens in Dalek Invasion of Earth. And she says in the commentary, like, I think they didn't know what to do with my character. I think I was just there to be there. And so I think they needed me to just sit in the corner. And so I feel strongly that Carol Ann Ford is one of the people who deserves respect the most in the world. Here's my big hot take. If you went back in time to the end of the Capaldi era, and you told me in the future there's going to be a season where for 2 seasons straight, they're building up to the fact that they're going to bring back Susan as Carol Ann Ford. And at the end of the second season, they film a special scene of Carol Ann Ford coming back as Susan. And then the third season gets canceled, so they delete that scene and they replace it with Billie Piper coming back. I would have stopped watching the show. And maybe I would have been better for it. Like, that would have annoyed me enough that I would have stopped watching the show. Partially because I don't know if this is still true, but like Rose obsession was way too prevalent in the fandom back then, and I just was over Rose. She had come back too many times. I still think the character's overrated, and the idea that like Carol Ann Ford's return to the show was deleted and replaced with Billie Piper. The only reason I'm not more upset about it is that I don't like the scene that they shot, and I would prefer that Stephen Moffat like do something different. I would like it most if we do 2 Christmas specials in 2027, 2028, and nothing else. This is what I would like most. Russell T Davies does the first one, ends his era. Stephen Moffat does the second one, and it's the Doctor reunites with Susan episode, and there's Daleks or whatever. And then they can do a new season after that. I think that's what the show needs.
With a new showrunner?
That's what I would like. Yeah, whoever. I don't know.
Not Pete McTighe.
I mean, they yeah, I don't know who would be the showrunner, honestly.
Ideally, I think someone who's completely new and not part of the current like Russell circle that's kind of been in control of the show.
Yeah,
but
I still people always I agree, but people always say like, well, it needs to be someone that doesn't even know the show, and it's like, well, you're objectively wrong. It needs to be someone who enjoys watching Doctor Who and knows the show.
Yeah, not someone who doesn't know the show, but I wouldn't say they have to have written for the show to know the show necessarily.
I mean, I think it's gotten to the point where like we might need a 5-year hiatus, and maybe Doctor Who comes back and it's not even made in the UK anymore. Like, it's gotten to that point where I think we've officially hit that boundary where it's like, it was made in Wales for 20 years or whatever. We might need a big long break, and then maybe the show isn't going to get made in the UK. I think that's a possibility. I think there's a lot of possibilities.
I think Doctor Who is such a British landmark that a lot of people would be very unhappy if it was made in, say, the US. I think a lot of people would feel personally.
My worry is that with Wales and Britain, it's kind of a goldfish environment where it's kind of hard to imagine like the new guy or the new group or the new take on the show, in my opinion, at this point. And I think Doctor Who needs to escape from its insularness, and I think that's intuitively why I'm pitching this, is because I'm like, is like the show being made by like someone who's a very good television producer in America who likes Doctor Who, but it's not going to be this like insular, like we're just doing the David Tennant era again. By the way, keeping Gallifrey destroyed is a massive mistake.
I agree.
No,
it should have been. It was on the path to being brought back, and then it was just destroyed again, and for no reason.
Yeah, I think the big reason why it's a mistake is, again, this is designed for people to come back on who didn't watch the Jodie Whittaker era because they didn't really like it. And then those people are going to come back on and they're going to, what's going on? And Russell made the mistake of assuming everyone wanted everything to go back to David Tennant. So it just kind of resets to, I'm the last of the Time Lords. But the majority of people who know Doctor Who used to watch it, don't watch it. The last thing they saw was Day of the Doctor.
Yeah.
Or the last thing they all remember. So you can imagine this big story. They bring Gallifrey back. Oh, there's hope for the future. My home is out there. I know where I'm going now. And then you come back and it's like, Gallifrey's is destroyed. I'm the last of my kind. And you're like, what's going on? Well, like not only how, but why? And I feel that way about Gallifrey being destroyed. I think once they recontextualize it as like 4 billion children just being murked, it's hard to do it again without like really justifying it. And I think Chibnall made it too much of like a wave of the hand.
Yeah, it didn't seem to affect the Doctor nearly enough, losing Gallifrey again after everything that she went through.
I feel like when you look at all the different showrunners of the modern era, I feel like Moffat's the one who's always like, well, I want to do sci-fi, but I want to like do it through the existence of some character. And then Russell T Davies is like, I want the relationship between the Doctor and the companion to be centerpiece, but I want all the sci-fi stuff to just happen and be crazy. And then Chris Chibnall likes exposition. That's my take. That's my diagnosis on Chris after so long. I think he believes that exposition is the fun part. And that's why his era is just, I call it Chibnall's gun, where there's so many moments in his era where he'll just do exposition and you'll waste a lot of time. And then later on you're like, hey, why did you tell me about that gun on the wall for like 20 minutes? And he's like, I don't know, it's cool. It's like, what? Do you not understand how storytelling works? You know? So Chibnall's gun is when they introduce you to the idea that there's a gun on the wall. They really, really go on about the fact that there's a gun in the wall, and then they never mention it again. That's what Chibnall's gun is. And that's why I have really mixed feelings about which era I like less, because I think at the very least the cast was more cohesive in the Jodie Whittaker era. And Chris Chibnall, in being a guy who likes exposition, at least he accomplished what he was trying to do. Tell me if I'm sounding crazy here.
Well, I guess at least I mean, it was full of exposition. So I guess if that was his aim, he accomplished that. I'm of the opinion that Series 11 was the best of the 3 Chibnall seasons. Not that I like it, but the reason it's my favorite of the 3 is because at least I think it was kind of doing its own thing and kind of had its own identity. And I feel like it in Series 12 and 13, he really started just trying to lean into pre-established lore, and he, at least Series 11 kind of had its own tone, but in Series 12 and 13 he was like, oh crap, throw in a bunch of jokes and catchphrases and try to make it feel more like Tenet again.
I did a Series 11 review, and I don't remember all of it. I don't remember any of it basically, but what I do remember is that I say I didn't like the season, and then I'm like very positive about the potential. Yeah. So yeah, I do agree that Series 11 is the peak of Whittaker era. It's also funny because I remember I had a joke at the end of that season where I was like, oh, hey, people who like this season, tell me about Yaz. Analyze her character for me. And no one could do it because she just passed tools and stuff.
She is a cop sometimes when the writers remember, but she doesn't do much cop stuff.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think actually Ryan ended up being an even worse companion than Yaz, because at least Yaz got a solo season. I guess Dan was there, but like she got a season with like a little tiny bit of development, at least something specific to her character. But Ryan, I think, has to be the worst companion in Doctor Who history. Like,
I think Yaz is easier to defend now just because the actress, I don't know how many times this happens where the main 2 actresses on the show went to the showrunners and said, people really want our characters to be gay. And I think it would be a big misservice if we didn't at least hint at going for it. And they kind of gave in. I think that's exceptional, and like, that you can at least talk about that.
It's a development. Yeah. The plot went somewhere in that regard. So, I mean,
it went somewhere, whereas like a lot of discussion with the newer companions is like that thing where you're trying to piece together what the plot is depending on what episode you're watching.
Yeah. There was that really weird 6 months time jump between Devil's Court and Boom. Like, yeah.
Right. And again, remember Russell said he was doing that to explain why Sarah Jane thinks she's from 1980. He clearly made that up. He just makes shit up. I'm telling you, he just makes shit up.
I think they switched the order of the episodes. Personally, I think that's why that happened. That weird jump.
But there is a line in Baby Geniuses, I know, because that's what I call the episode. There's some line that hints that they're going to do the Time Lord Magic Baby storyline with that companion. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's when they're first entering the spaceship. There's some line where they allude to that somehow, and obviously that didn't end up happening. So there's just a ton of weird stuff like that, and that was one of the things I wasn't energized to watch this season, because I got spoiled on all the stuff with the new companion, and just the fact that every episode people posted about with the newer companion, I can't remember her name. But yeah, every time people would post clips or talk about different scenes, I'd be like, every episode you guys post, this is a different character.
Yeah, no, that's one of the big problems with the season. And if you ever get around to watching it, I think you might be surprised by just how much she changes episode to episode.
And it upset me because when I first saw that woman, I said to myself, that is one of the most beautiful people I have ever seen in my entire life. Like, I that might be cringy to say, but I think that is one of the most beautiful women on the earth. I was completely shocked. and she's a good actress, and she was in Star Wars. I was really excited to see them do something coherent with her. And when I found out that they didn't, I was like, I don't want to watch this bullshit.
Oh, she was great in Andor, for sure. She had a lot more to do there.
Yeah.
I guess I never got around to asking the second question, but this.
Oh yeah.
Not that I didn't enjoy that conversation. It was a good tangent. But the second question I was going to ask you about this new era is, if you were hypothetically showrunner, what would you have done differently?
Oh yeah, there's so many. Obviously, every Doctor Who fan that gets asked this is going to have a lot of things to say. Like, if you were showrunner, I think it's more like if I was a producer.
Sure, yeah. I mean, if you want to look at it that way, yeah.
There's it's kind of hidden lore that they kind of kept secret for a while. For instance, that when Christopher Eccleston passed on Day of the Doctor, Stephen Moffat wanted it to be Paul McGann, which would have been a better anniversary special.
I wish that's what it had been. I didn't even know that he wanted that. Did the BBC poo-poo it?
There was some executive, because for a long time there were a bunch of executives at the BBC for like 30 years who were like, well, Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy, Paul McGann, that's poison to the brand. The brand failed under them, so don't even think about bringing them back. And so I believe he was specifically told no classic Doctors filming new material. And I think he was specifically told you can't have Paul McGann shoot new material in the episode, which is why one of the best, most interesting, important things to watching the show, Name of the Doctor, was not a real episode. So I want to be one of those producers that just tells them what to do, but doesn't actually have to be good at show running. But so what would I do? First of all, going back to the thing where I'm like, I think Russell has bad taste in things. I think that's true to the extent that he's just going to keep doing things he's already done aesthetically. I think that's important. I think aesthetically the era is a misstep. I think the Doctor should have one outfit. I don't care how big the budget is. The Doctor should have a look.
Actually, I am actually of the opinion that I like the idea of that. This is one of the only areas where I agree with Russell. I think it was cool to try something new and have the Doctor not have a costume. I've never been a huge fan of the Doctor having a costume. I think it's cool if he sort of changes his clothes based on where he goes to kind of blend in with the environment.
I think it's cool too.
There can be like a look. There can be a bit more of a look to it, even if the clothes, like the 12th Doctor, I think is a good example of changing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just when you think to yourself, oh, how is Doctor Who magazine going to draw the Doctor? What outfit is he going to be wearing in a toy? It's usually just like what he wore in the Christmas special. I think they should have just had him wear that every once in a while. But here's my big hot take. Russell T Davies has this aesthetic with Doctor Who that's very hipster and very like sleek now. I think Doctor Who should be kind of steampunky, and I think the TARDIS interior should be kind of steampunky. I think he should dress like he intended to land in Victorian England and he screwed up.
Sure, yeah, that too.
I think those are things that have worked really well with the show, haven't really been done with the new show. And I would try and find a new companion who just will have a different perspective for the audience, other than just like, I'm Rose Tyler again. I'm a 19-year-old girl and I have this thing. Sorry, was the question like I'm coming in at the start of this era, or I'm coming in at the start of the next era?
You're coming at the start of the last era. So like around the 60th anniversary, like after Power of the Doctor, if you were coming in then, like what would you have done differently?
Yeah. Let me study that for a second.
I definitely agree that having a companion from some past time period and getting to see them change their worldview or maybe lose some of the more sort of outdated beliefs that they may have grown up with. I think that could have made for good storytelling, but the show never wants to do that.
I think so as well. I think specifically I would have fought tooth and nail until I was bleeding and in agony with Disney to not shoot the show in 2K or 4K or whatever they did. Shoot it in a lower quality, shoot it in 1080p. Doctor Who should be a point and shoot show. It started off as a show where it was them just doing a play every week with a bunch of cameras switching back and forth. It should be kind of a point and shoot show. And I think having a lower budget, lower fidelity, but more episodes is definitely worth it. I think having the show shot in 1080p with 12 episodes instead of 8, I think that would have made a big difference. I think I would have I think I'd want a script doctor and a continuity advisor. I know he has continuity advisors because I've
he probably doesn't. They can't be very good continuity advisors, or he doesn't listen to them. But
well, they're the continuity advisors that are like, hey, did you know in this one episode the Doctor name drops like some faction paradox bullshit? That was somebody that Russell knows, you know. But I definitely think there needs to be work on just like the character. The main character is the number one most important thing. And excuse me a second. Once you're done with that, you can start going like, okay, what has Doctor Who not done? I think there's a number of things that like have always been hanging up on the coat rack. Like one day Doctor Who will do this thing. I think like it's like most of them have been like one day Doctor Who will bring the Master back, and you bring that down. Oh, one day Doctor Who will do a Cybermen versus Dalek story. You bring that down. I think there's still a few of those that are up. I think doing like a really, really cool, you know, if I was given a huge budget, I would immediately go, oh, we're going to do a prequel to Battlefield. I think that's what I would have gone for. You know, you can still do, because I think Battlefield's one of the most interesting ideas that anyone's ever done on television. It's very River Song. And if people who haven't seen Battlefield, which is most people because it bombed, it's like the lowest viewed episode ever. So Battlefield is an episode where fantasy characters from a universe where it's like magic instead of science, they invade the Doctor's universe. And it's basically all the King Arthur people in that aesthetic, but they're descendants. And they're trying to take over the Doctor's world or something. You know, there's details. And the Doctor and all of his friends have to gang together to stop it. And there is a scene in the episode where the Doctor finds a letter from himself indicating that this whole thing happened because in his own future, he has an adventure in that alternate universe where he kind of bungles things up or manipulates stuff. And then he sets up the events of the story and leaves a letter for himself explaining what's going on. There have been several pieces of expanded media that have shown that flashback adventure. In my opinion, it's a waste of time because the TV show needs to do it, and the TV show will supersede that. I mean, maybe the Doctor just keeps doing it in every fantasy universe he ends up in just to be sure. But I think you could get a lot of really compelling press out of that. And I think it's one of those obvious stories, and it's one of those things where it's a throwback and it's kind of reminding people of the past. It's encouraging people to enjoy the catalog of Doctor Who's backlog, but it's doing it in a way where you like watch the story. Because even with like this Celestial Toymaker, there's so many parts of that story where it felt like Russell like didn't actually watch that episode.
Yeah, because the Celestial Toymaker cheats in the original story, right?
Yes.
And then it's established as a rule in the Giggle, like he would never cheat ever.
Yeah. So another thing is, the Celestial Toymaker, he's this big, powerful villain, and I guess because they didn't want to spend more money, they just slapped an outfit from Marco Polo on him. And I think at some point they were like, should we call him the Mandarin? And then they were like, no. So he's just a white guy who is wearing a weird Chinese outfit, and it's never mentioned. But in the expanded media, they were like, oh, anything that was almost done in the show needs to be done. So they renamed his character the Mandarin. In expanded media, and suddenly the character is kind of racist now. And so the story I've been told is that Russell kind of vaguely remembered that or heard about it and said, oh, what if the Toymaker is just kind of racist? Like what if that's his thing? Let's just play into that. And that's why the character keeps doing bad accents.
Yeah, that's one of the oddest decisions I think he made in the 60th.
Yeah, and it's clearly like a man who has not seen the episode. First of all, in the episode, it's implied that either the Doctor and the Toymaker know each other or they've met before. It's kind of vague. I rewatched it recently. So the fact that the Doctor is like, I've battled him one time before is like, okay, that already doesn't make sense. Probably, you know? So it's just like, I think if you're gonna give tribute to this stuff, I think you owe the episode like a rewatch. I don't know why Russell seems to be the kind of person that actually doesn't like watching Doctor Who. But I think that's a big thing where you can do a lot of the storylines they did To be honest with you, if I still had to do all the same storylines that they did in those stories, I probably, my first intuition would have been to just do the obvious twist that's going to make sense, even if it's going to be slightly derivative. Because who's the blonde companion? I forget her name.
Ruby?
I have a thing with names. Yeah, Ruby. Clearly the twist they were setting up is that she's like the child of a god or some paradox or some Clara Oswald bullshit, right? And clearly they abandoned that because I think it's pretty obvious the actress left the show earlier than she was meant to. I think it would be a better season of television if that story arc made sense. If it wasn't just like, oh yeah, she's got magical powers. It's she's got magical powers because fuck you. That's
because
why.
her mother was important because we thought it was important, which makes it important, which means she can summon snow into existence because she, because she thought that she could do that.
A child abandoned at a church so important that the god of death couldn't finish his plan because he was so upset that he couldn't find this person on Google.
Somehow.
This story is brilliant, and you know it is because I, in Ncuti Gatwa, am telling you it's brilliant right now in the final scene of the episode. It's just that like fuck you mentality of the writing where you're just like, I'm not an idiot. Why are you writing the show like you think I'm stupid?
Yeah, like I think some of that again plays into how when writers think they're writing a quote unquote kids show, they think they can get away with writing as if the audience are stupid. It's especially ironic since the kids aren't even watching Doctor Who right now. Like it's not pulling new viewers. The audience is aged. Yeah, the youngest fans are like 18 at this point.
I think the other thing is that like the other one that's really offensive is the Ronnie. Mm-hmm. And I hate that thing Russell does, the George Lucas thing where he's like, it was all planned. I definitely did incest on purpose in Star Wars. Where if you watch just the old woman character, first of all, there are two old woman characters in this era where the gimmick for both of them is that sometimes they show up in episodes.
Yeah, it's odd.
And it took me so long to figure out that they're not the same character. And maybe that's offensive. I am kind of face blind, but honest to God, until the final episode of the first season, I thought they were the same character.
My roommate thought the same as well. I had to explain to him.
I was confused that she was in two places.
I had to explain to him that for some reason Russell's doing two different mystery boxes with an old woman who keeps showing up. And if you count Susan showing up in the Interstellar Song Contest, it's kind of three different old women showing up in mystery boxes.
But when she says she says something to that woman in the bed where she's like, when I speak my name, you will know my power, but I am above this or whatever. And it's just like, oh yeah, she's the Ronnie. It's like, Russell, you made that up. Don't act like you planned that because it doesn't make sense.
And the whole breaking the fourth wall thing being her gimmick, just like it very much so implied that she was, like part of the pantheon of gods, like she was some kind of divine being, and what's really weird is when she's revealed as the Ronnie, she just stops breaking the fourth wall. It just like she never does it again after
it's weird. I mean, my take is that I think sometimes the Doctor just should be able to break the fourth wall. Like Tom Baker and William Hartnell would break the fourth wall all the
very
time.
Occasionally, maybe, but she was doing it so regularly.
Yeah, like not every. There's a running thing for instance, in the Tom Baker era, which Shada completed for the first few seasons, where I believe at the end of every episode for a few seasons in a row, the Doctor looks into the camera and smiles. And they had him do it in Shada when they shot the new scene. So I think there's 3 episodes where he does it, maybe. And it's like, Tom Baker hosted Disney Time. He's going to come out and be like, yo, yes, I am the Doctor from that show you watch. I think every once in a while the Doctor, like when Ncuti Gatwa looks at the camera and says, oh, I thought it was non-diegetic, I think it just works. I don't think, but I remember seeing that and being like, oh, don't tell me he's going to make it like the lore that breaking the fourth wall is some god thing. I don't want that,
Yeah. But Russell does.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I remember when I was watching the Doctor Who DVDs as a kid, and it would be stocked full of the writers and producers and actors being like, "This episode blows, and here's why I wasn't happy filming it, and here's why I'm still pissed off that they fired me, and this and that." And then it's weird that the era of DVD and special features came about where you could experience that with old media, and now we're in this weird tight-lipped parasocial culture where we may never know what the show was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And we're all kind of piecing it together from leaks and then trying to trick some of the actors into confirming what we've pieced together. It's just weird. And it's like, I truly would love to know what the plot to the show was supposed to be, because I think like 80% of the stuff they introduced in this era just doesn't make sense. Like you can't rewatch the show and be like, you see when Ruby starts levitating and it starts snowing and she's using her god powers. That's happening because
she's an orphan. Orphans can do this.
Orphans, that's an orphan power. True. I do think there's a compelling case to be made that like an inherent important part of the Doctor is the Doctor's otherness.
Sure.
And I didn't understand the timeless child for a while until I learned that Chris Chibnall was an orphan. And so I think, whether he did anything with it or not, I think he wanted the Doctor to be an orphan because it kind of connected with him, that his own sense of his own otherness. And the other day, Russell T. Davies was saying in an interview, I think of Doctor Who as a gay show because, the Doctor has that otherness.
They're connecting it up to their own lives and their own experiences.
And then Stephen Moffat is Scottish, so there you go.
So
like his Doctor and his Master were Scottish, so there you go.
I guess every writer kind of wants to leave their stamp on the show and sort of connect it up to their life experiences. Yes. And
it's difficult because, like, I don't know how you would write Doctor Who today without implying that the new era isn't set in the same universe. Because that's basically what Chris Chibnall set the precedent for. The internal logic of the Whittaker era is not consistent with the internal logic of like the Matt Smith era. Down to the fact that
the river song thing is like the number one. It doesn't work with the timeless child at all.
No, they're completely different backstories. And I don't know how you would keep making the show without having to do that again. Because I don't think the timeless child, I think Russell, I heard rumors about this, but I believe that Russell, in my opinion, whether the rumors are true or not, I think he wanted to kind of like prop Chris up a little bit by actually doing something with all of his twists and all his story arcs that he forgot to finish.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why the timeless child was integrated. I think that's why he referenced
the flux.
The fact that the flux destroyed like 90% of the universe, and then they forgot to hit undo.
Yeah.
And I had to spend years of my life having Jodie Whittaker fans explain to me that they did undo it. You had to pay attention to ADR in the background of one random scene. You had to look at text scrolling on the TV. Clearly they undid it. Turns out they didn't. And it's like, okay, cool. I guess we don't have a moon now. I guess Saturn doesn't exist because I think we saw Saturn explode.
Well, it was the same with the bi-generation this era. I remember people seeing people say that it didn't really make sense and it wasn't really properly explained, and then people were like, it totally makes sense because the episode's about bringing myths into reality, and they said bi-generation's a myth, so it was brought into reality because the toy maker's there. The toy maker's presence canonizes myths and everything.
And then more specifically, they were like, clearly what's happening, obviously on text, the only interpretation is that the David Tennant split off of the Doctor is going to keep existing, go through therapy, and then his mind is going to travel back in time to become the Inshuti Gatwa Doctor. Okay. And then the Inshuti Gatwa Doctor goes off. Clearly that's what happens. And it's just like the rest of the show, there's just like, it's not.
They like explicitly confirmed that that's not how it works in the reality war, basically.
Yeah, and every time it gets brought up, it is different, because then the one time they bring it up, he's like, it split me in half. I can't do that again. It's like, you never indicated that was a problem before this episode. You know what I mean? So it's just, what was I saying earlier about, Peter Davison said something about the new run, which I think is actually very, very smart.
What do you say?
He said, the latest Doctor Who episodes feel like you're watching a trailer for a different Doctor Who episode.
He said that, really?
Yeah, he said that. He says it feels like you're watching a commercial for a different Doctor Who episode, and that's truly how I feel. And I think one of the big problems with the show for a while has been we need two-parters. I think the show doesn't work without two-parters. I think you need at least 2 or 3 two-parters a season.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think bring back serials or have like arcs within seasons so that they're sort of episodes tied together, like 3 episodes sort of tied together.
Because for reference, a 4-part classic era episode and a 2-part modern era episode, they're the same length. So I mean, it's the format that the show has always been organically the best at. It's where the characters get to exist and have slow scenes, and they get to like establish themselves more clearly. And I think it hooks the audience in. And I think it's one of the big things that the show has been missing is just that watching nothing but 45-minute episodes of the show feels like you're reading the Wikipedia description of the episode. Like it feels like you're fast forwarding through the story. It's just weird.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of been an issue since 2005, but it is kind of just like most issues in the show. I think they've been there since RTD1, but they've just been steadily kind of getting worse over time, just festering.
When they announced Russell was taking over, I was immediately like, oh, fuck, this isn't going to be good. Like, and I think that's different from most people because I remember everyone on Twitter was like, yes, my show is going to be saved. And I remember just being like, weren't we all like, wasn't there a lot of controversies about this guy like in the 6 months before it was announced he was coming back? Like he almost killed a bunch of extras with some exploding couch thing, and he kind of screwed over Christopher Eccleston, and he had cast members on the show who were sex pests and were just pulling their junk out, and he was like, haha.
Yeah, I was always kind of surprised by how John Barrowman's career got torched, but he kind of escaped any substantive criticism, even though he was supervising the set when that happened.
By the way, John Barrowman didn't get canceled until he wouldn't shut the fuck up about it. I want that to be on the record.
He dug his own grave, very much so.
Because when it first came out, he put out a statement. Everyone was like, well, that's fine. Let's move on. And then he kept going on like Instagram Live to be like, just to be clear, it was very funny. And you can't rewrite history. Me pulling out my dick was hilarious. And you can say it. And it's like, shut the fuck up. What is wrong with you?
Yeah, well, what I was trying to say isn't that John Barrowman didn't deserve to get his career torched. I honestly, I think he did. It's just that I have no idea what happened on set. I have no idea if he tried to get him to stop at all. But I think it's odd that he basically skirted any real criticism.
I mean, even when we agree the fact that 3 out of however many male cast members from the companions of the Russell T Davies era were apparently sex pests. Just like when you hear Christopher Eccleston describe how they worked on the show, Christopher Eccleston's one of the only people who would just tell you what filming Series 1 was like. And it's fascinating because he'll go on a panel and he'll be like, we did the script reading for 1 episode, and then we weren't allowed to sleep. We stayed up all night because we were driven across the country because we were starting filming on the Dalek episode. And it was like our schedule was so insane that we just had to do that over and over again. And we were all exhausted. And it was the show was being run terribly. And I remember when it announced he was coming back, I was like, I don't even have significant evidence that he even considers that he should change he's never even done the thing where he's like posting Instagram thing, like, I'm always learning, it's just like, I was like, there's no evidence that he's going to be a less chaotic showrunner to work with.
I mean, it's just weird that like the history almost seemed to repeat itself with Millie Gibson exiting so soon and then Ncuti exiting super abruptly. It's like, this only seems to happen when Russell is showrunner.
And then when specifically when she left, of course, the press and the fans, there were a ton of rumors that kind of made her seem like a bad person or like hard to work with or a drama queen. Mm-hmm. Russell didn't say anything.
No one defended her. That pissed me off.
It's exactly what he did with Chris, is because he was basically like, Chris got, because Chris basically quit because Russell was a nightmare and the show was a nightmare to work on. And then the press blamed Chris, and Russell Davies was like, well, okay, if you're going to do that. And it's just like, it's just not a way you should be a showrunner, in my opinion. And I just,
are you aware of the theory that the "Don't you think she looks tired" line in the Christmas Invasion was aimed at Chris?
I didn't know that. No, you're telling me for the first time.
Yeah, because one of the specific things people were saying, or that the tabloids were saying about Chris, is that he was too tired to continue in the role. He found it tiring. And then Chris was complaining, if any producer reads that, they won't hire me because they'll think I get tired really easily. So the word tired specifically was being thrown out a lot. And then in the Christmas Invasion, which he wrote while that drama was unfolding and which aired, shortly thereafter, specifically, he takes down the prime minister by saying, "Don't you think she looks tired?"
I mean, that it does seem like a coincidence to me, because to me it seems like a joke about misogyny.
It could be. The more that time has gone on, the more I've started to think it might have actually not been a coincidence.
I don't, but yeah, it's just the stuff with Chris. It's just weird, and I mean, the story I've heard, and I don't know if there's a first. So I would feel iffy about actually, putting this in one of my videos, because I don't know if there's an official source to pull this from. But the story I've heard is when they were filming Rose, there's a shot in Rose where there's a couch on fire, and they filmed a scene where the couch goes through a window when it's on fire, and they almost killed a bunch of extras.
Yeah, I think there was actually just footage of it that leaked recently. I think it's been basically confirmed that it happened.
Well, yeah, and the story is that Chris was like, that it was a nightmare, because Chris was like, what are you doing? This is the first episode. You almost killed a bunch of people. And, he went to bat for these extras, because that's the kind of guy Chris is. And Russell T Davies kind of had to bury it, because if that had been, like, if you could imagine that's the first episode of Doctor Who, is that controversy, they almost killed a bunch of people for a shot that they didn't even use, that wasn't even important, the show wouldn't still be on the air. And it's just crazy to think that, like, yeah, we need to hand the keys back to that guy. The guy that's error is only filled with those moments. I don't know. I mean, again, it's like if Stephen Moffat had done any of that shit, we would hear about it every day in the fandom. People would talk about it every day. But with Russell, it's different for some reason, and I don't fully understand why.
I think the tides are kind of turning. I think Russell hate is becoming quite dominant. I remember, like, after the 60th specials aired, immediately I was very critical, but when I tried to criticize it, people would jump down my throat at that time, be like, you don't have media literacy, no, this is fine, and like, this happened 20 years ago, don't criticize Russell for it, things were different back then. But I've noticed such a seismic shift in how people talk about him, and these days I get no pushback whatsoever if I criticize him.
My camera's giving me an error message.
Oh, okay.
I can try and swap the SD card, or we could just like try and do the last bit of this off camera if it doesn't.
It's whatever you'd prefer. Do you have like a webcam?
I guess I could try and do a webcam. Hold on. Yeah, I'll open up OBS for you, and it'll just
we can sort of quickly go through the next two questions.
Yeah, well, there's one thing I want to say about, like, the thing about Russell. All right, I'm now recording a completely different angle from my laptop.
Awesome.
There's so much stuff in Russell's era that's like, I mentioned before, it's like, I can't show this to one of my friends. It feels like every other episode has a moment like that, and I think that I don't know how they accomplished that. Like, the actual, first episode of the 60th anniversary, there's a weird moment where Russell clearly indicates that he believes transgender people and non-binary people are the same. Like, he doesn't realize that there's a difference between those two things.
That was such a boomer moment.
And it was like, how did it get that far? Literally, how did the actors see that material and not go, Russell, that this doesn't make any sense? That's what I don't get. I don't understand how so many moments like that go from script to screen. I think surely there must be someone on set that's like, oh, we'll fix this real quick. Because it's just so blatant, and it happens so often. It's just weird to me. You know what I mean? And that I think that's the big thing that stands out to me.
I think it's the George Lucas effect. I don't think anyone wanted to question him because he's now seen as like he's the granddaddy of New Who. He's the guy that brought it back. He knows what he's doing. Don't question him. He wrote Midnight and he wrote It's a Sin. He's an award-winning writer. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead and tell me your next question though.
Yeah. So as a content creator who has made some Doctor Who content in the past, I know that you don't make it regularly like some of the other people I've talked to, but has this new era affected the likelihood of you making any Doctor Who content in the future?
That's a good one. I mean, for years now, I've been kind of in the background, been working on a Doctor Who video, and this era did. There was
Really?
a point in time where I was like, I need to do that video this month, and then it was like, okay, well now that I didn't do it that month, I can do it whenever. It doesn't matter. And that's that I've been working on a video about Doctor Who spin-offs. So I've also not seen the spin-off because in my head, I think it's a potential video.
Yeah, it was clearly trying to be Children of Earth, but like worse.
It's this consistent problem where I'm like literally the other day I was trying to say to myself, if I can become He-Man and I can put out one video a month for the next year, how is it going to fit into my schedule? You know, like how, you know, because I have a list of like 8 to 15 videos that I'm kind of conceptualizing at any time, and I kept being like, I don't know where I would do a Doctor Who video because I haven't posted as a presenter to my main account in 2 years. So this next video is really important to me. I've hopefully picked a topic that's going to do well, because if it doesn't, I might be in I might be down shit creek without a paddle. There is a legitimate risk that if I do content about Doctor Who, it will underperform in such a way that it will actually drag down my livelihood. Like, that is a true sentiment. Because, and you know, that's been true of Doctor Who since I started, for like a decade, honestly. Where it's like, if I do a Doctor Who video, it's not going to do well. You know, most of my Doctor Who content is not done well. I think the Doctor Who knockoffs one is the only one that's been even acceptable. And I don't know, I think I get closer to making a Doctor Who video, but then I just think to myself, you know, if I put out a Doctor Who video right before like I review the iCarly reboot or something, you know, there's the iCarly reboots, you know, that's a video I'm working on. There's a, you know, with the history of my channel, a video like that could change my life or like get me out of debt, because I'm in debt right now. And it's like, I would seriously be jeopardizing the potential of my channel's trajectory by just blindly inserting Doctor Who content in there, because it just doesn't have the brand recognition it used to. And yeah, so that's the thing I'm always struggling with, where I'm like, I don't know when I would feel comfortable to be like, to like put out, excuse me, my camera made a noise. That's not just Doctor Who's fault. It's also the tragedy of success on YouTube. It's why so many YouTubers start a second channel, where some of the most fun I've had on YouTube throughout my career, I don't know how much of my stuff you've watched, but there's often been times where like things haven't been things have not been going super great, and I just say, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want this week. You know, that's how like the Back to the Future spinoffs video happened. Is because I'll just be like, video channel's not doing well, I just need to do a video, I'll just do what I want. That kind of like freedom and rebellious energy just becomes less safe the bigger you get. And Doctor Who feels like a big risk in terms of content for me. Yeah,
I'm coming from it. I'm coming at it from a very different perspective, because I'm a much smaller channel, obviously. But my Doctor Who videos in general have been some of my best performing videos.
Really?
So I'm almost the opposite. I almost feel pressure to make another Doctor Who video going over the most recent stuff, because it's some of my most watched stuff. So I'm like on the other side of, I'm the polar opposite side of that from you. That being said, I will say personally, it still did derail my plans, because I was going to make a big video about classic Doctor Who and going through kind of some of the stuff we talked about, how I kind of prefer the vibes of classic Who, and I also preferred how it was more experimental. It took more risks. It felt like it was willing to try new things more.
My big hot take about why certain eras of classic Who works is because it's not a time travel show, and it's not a space travel show. The TARDIS is not the story. The TARDIS is the setup to the story. So every good, you know, in my opinion, most of the good Doctor Who stories start with TARDIS has landed somewhere. Let's go check it out. Uh-oh, where'd the TARDIS go? and now we have to we're in a place, we're in a story, we're in a location, and we as characters have to survive. It's a Planet of the Week story show.
Yeah.
Which it's not a common trope. It's like Star Wars shows do it sometimes. It's hard to do on a budget, but it's very compelling to be like, yeah, we're just going to drop these characters that you know and like into like a dictatorship and then do a really compelling story about how they collapse the dictatorship and then they're just going to fuck off. And I think that's interesting. Anyways, but go on. What were you saying about you were going to do a video about it?
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, I was just going to do a video going over everything I talked about and sort of exploring each different era and how the show changed. And I was looking forward to it. I was even starting to rewatch the show and like graph out data on like which eras were more joke heavy, which eras were more exposition heavy. How did the dialogue change between script editors and everything? But then the 60th specials happened. And I really didn't like them, and I felt like everyone except Wild Blue Yonder, but I didn't like 3 out of 4 of them. And it felt at the time like everyone else was glazing them and sort of overlooking the issues in them. And I was worried that the show was maybe not headed in a great place, and that Russell coming back wasn't a good idea, which at that time was more of a controversial opinion. So I decided to put that other video on the back burner and make a big video about the 60th anniversary, which then ended up being like 3 hours long and way bigger than I anticipated it was going to be. And it took so long that the season started airing just around the time I dropped the video. So then I decided to and also it got a copyright strike from BBC because of course.
Oh yeah.
So I decided to like make a second version of the video, sort of also with a review of the season, and then it was 4 hours.
They used to do something to me. I don't know if they still do it, but I've never seen another group of people do this. Have they ever done this to you? They give you a copyright claim, you fight the copyright claim, you go through the period of time, you win, and then they send you another copyright claim for a different episode like the day before it's going to expire. I have never seen anyone but the BBC do that. It's objectively malicious, and it's one of the big reasons I stopped doing Doctor Who content, because it's fucking evil in my opinion.
Yeah, what happened with the original video is, I cleared it in the system, I got it past the copyright checks. It was up for like a little under a month, and it did quite well. It got like it was in the hundreds of thousands of views, and then suddenly a claim appeared for it for the giggle, even though I'd previously cleared it. It just appeared. I'm not 100% sure why, and I couldn't. I could, no matter what I did, I couldn't get them to release the claim. First, I tried cutting the video a little bit in the YouTube editor, and that didn't fix anything.
Mean, hot take, newer YouTubers are scared of just challenging the claim. These days, you challenge the claim, they have a week to respond. If they don't respond, they can hit it back to you, and then you can challenge the claim again, and then they might say, oh, we're going to take it down and give you a strike. Then you challenge that again, and at that point, if they don't take you to court, YouTube just keeps it up. That's the secret. It's
more recently,
YouTubers don't want to do that.
That's what I've been doing. Like I've been releasing videos going through the entire history of Disney and like going through all their movies, and they're actually very good. They've been releasing the claims when I asked them to.
Yeah, a lot of them are really. Paramount is actually, like, you would think I have beef with Paramount, but for them, except for the Beverly Hillbillies, obviously, Paramount is like pretty consistently like, day 2 or 3 they'll just release it. So
I have not had the same experience with Paramount. They I tried to put out a video about the Dexter finale, but like not a main channel video, just a second channel one of my first time sort of viewing it and my thoughts on it, and they would not release the claim on that no matter what I tried.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, obviously it's one of those things where it's like Paramount is, it's a giant tree of different. So I'm dealing with Nickelodeon. Dexter obviously isn't on Nickelodeon, so whatever.
So it could have been different tree of
different departments. One thing I guess I want to say about the I really think bring back the Celestial Toymaker for the anniversary. Great idea. I do think they should have done what everyone was predicting, which is they should have had it been like some commentary on nostalgia or something. I like that episode more than some people, the Toymaker anniversary episode. But from the day it aired, I was disappointed in how they depict the games, because I was like, how did he do the least interesting version of the Toymaker I've ever seen? Because it's like the original Toymaker was basically, he made giant like Mr. Beast board games basically, and you had to go and play the game, and he would cheat all the time. And then Russell T Davies was like, we'll do that again, but on fast forward. So the second game is they're going to play like solitaire or something, and it's going to be over in 20 seconds. And then the third game is they're going to bounce the bouncy ball.
And he just defeats him by throwing a ball in such a way that he can't catch it. And there's no twist. Like, there's nothing.
By comparison, I don't know if you know this lore, but there was a canceled Celestial Toymaker episode that was going to be made
in the 80s.
In the 80s, yes. They were going to bring back the original episode. And that episode has problems, in my opinion. But it was going to be, the storyline was going to be that the Celestial Toymaker comes to the Doctor's domain and takes over a theme park.
I've actually listened to the Big Finish version of it, so.
I haven't listened to the Big Finish version, but just that on paper, like the Celestial Toymaker takes over a theme park, that is so baller. And then
it is a better story than the giggle.
And then just going straight to like, aha, I bounced that ball better than you expected. It's just like, God damn it.
I remember thinking very strongly they should have worked. It feels like the other main plot of the episode that the Toymaker made everyone on Earth insane, like didn't play into. Yeah. They barely they barely got anything out of it, and it didn't play into the climax at all. I remember thinking that television. Or actually, this was actually my sister's idea because I watched it with my sister, so I'll give her credit. But it was her idea that it should have been the Doctor should have somehow thrown the ball to one of the people that the Toymaker made crazy. And then because everyone is now like can't accept losing or can't accept being wrong, they'll all go crazy trying to get the ball. And the Toymaker will never have any chance of getting the ball back into his possession because all the crazy people are trying to get it now. And so the Doctor basically would have weaponized that against him so that he can't win the game.
Yeah, that would have been a clever twist if the person writing it had like, written a draft and then rewritten the script.
Yeah, that the thing that you're supposed to do.
I think the story is that originally it was going to be about someone takes over television or something, and then he started working on it, and then someone was like, "Oh, this is kind of like the Celestial Toymaker," and he was like, okay, I'll just bring back the Celestial Toymaker." And so it's very like you can just feel every page of him being like, now what am I going to make up?
Do you think that the show currently is in a better or worse place than it was in 2022? Before like Russell returned.
I think it's definitely in a worse place. That doesn't that I want to be specific and say that doesn't mean that like I would unwrite like in Ncuti Gatwa and all the things I liked, but if you were to say, okay, you're making a new era of the show and you're picking up from Jodie Whittaker regenerating and it fades to black, versus, okay, you're making a new Doctor Who show and you're picking up from one of the most poorly made, convoluted, remixed, re-edited, rewritten, cliffhangers of all time. It's not just that the show had a bad episode. It's that the show is now bowing out on that, and that's just where it's going to be. And luckily we're supposedly going to get that Christmas special that's going to wrap it up. But like, I would, if you offered me the chance to run the show and I pick up from where the latest episode, I would say no. Because I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do with this. Because it's literally, it doesn't make sense. In every episode, they describe the plot differently. Like it's just harder to pick it up and start from new. And at the same time, if they don't pay it off, I feel like that also damages the show in a significant way.
That's why I personally feel like the show needs a reboot, like a complete reboot.
Like, so you
just
think
start
like
from scratch?
Like, do you think literally like no continuity at all, like new universe, or?
It's complicated. I mean, I think that could work. What they did in 2005 was they kind of kept it ambiguous. They didn't, like, at first, it wasn't actually super clear that he was called the Ninth Doctor, but there were never really references to things that happened like in the classic series. They brought back like the Daleks and everything, but
no, there's a whole scene where he finds a Cyberman head and he's talking to the Cyberman head, and Unit is there and he knows who Unit are.
Yeah, but I remember like looking at old forums of people talking about this from like 2005. Like it seemed like even he's talking about these things, but you could kind of interpret it as still like it was a different version of Unit or the Cybermen, and like it's still supposed to be like the Doctor's still supposed to have traveled a lot in the past, but it's like whether or not it's the exact same adventures we saw on TV. Is sort of up for debate, and the show doesn't really confirm or deny. The first time they actually explicitly showed on screen past incarnations was The Next Doctor, which was almost the very end of Tennant's run.
You're close. The
first did they time do it before that?
The first time was Human Nature, when he draws all the actors in the journal.
You're totally right. Right, they have right,
and you can actually compare the journal to the picture on Wikipedia for the Doctor at the time. And they just traced the main image showing all the actors from Wikipedia. So that's how you can tell who's because they're like, they traced this image of William Hartnell, they traced this image of Paul McGann. That's literally what they did.
But I guess the point I'm making more so is that even with a few little like nods to the classic series, it didn't. You certainly didn't have to watch the classic series to watch New Who, and it still felt fresh, and it felt like a reboot, basically, and a new direction.
I think if we're going to talk about like episodes that are commendable for being a reboot, I always tell people like when people say where should I start, everyone is always like, we'll just start with the Ninth Doctor. I always tell people, watch the 11th Hour. Like if you've been watching the Tennant era, it does. In little ways, the Doctor will say, like, I've been traveling alone, I need to travel with someone. So it's made by someone that's been watching the show, right? But at the same time, it's like a whole different magical little bubble, because you're experiencing the story through Amy Pond. This mysterious man crash lands in her backyard, and there's a mystery that builds up, and there's all these odd little things. And it is a great, like, a lot of people started watching Doctor Who by watching the first Matt Smith season and then hopping around. And I think that's what Doctor Who has needed since Capaldi left. I mean, it's what Jodie Whittaker's era marketed itself as, but then it was very obvious that Christian Bale was like, yeah, but actually I don't want to do that. I think there was a lot more executive meddling in the first season, and that made his show better. But I think the show does really need a proper, like, someone needs to come in and be like, this is my Doctor. I'm doing something completely different. The tone of the show is completely different. The special effects are completely different. The TARDIS is different. The outfits are different. It's completely different taste in everything. We're not just going to be doing the Russell T Davies thing of him just mentioning something and then being sad or angry, because that's one of my big gripes, is because he'll just do that. That's why, he'll be like, Gallifrey's gone, I'm going to look sad. Or like, the flux happened, I'm going to look angry. But, I'm jumping back to hating on Russell. But the point is, you need someone to come in who just has a new slate where you can sense, as you said, that some version of the previous worlds exist. But it's you can just watch it as a fresh start. I think Peter Capaldi said something beautiful, which I really believe about the show. He said, Doctor Who's a show about death. Doctor Who's a show where, people experience death, people experience change. And that's the reason, apparently, that he's never come back. It's because he believes his era needs to exist on its own. His Doctor needs to be dead for it to have the power that it does as storytelling.
And I respect that massively.
But to circle that back around to my mantra about Doctor Who, I remember when I was a kid, I watched Doctor Who Confidential. I don't know if you've ever seen that show.
I remember watching it back in the day.
For the episode Blink, for some reason, they couldn't really make an actual episode about Blink. I don't know why, because the Doctor's not in it. For some reason, they decided they weren't going to do a proper, like, full episode showing the behind the scenes. So instead, it was just the writers and the actors on the show talking about growing up with Doctor Who. And I remember one of the writers, who has since become extremely controversial, one of the writers says, Doctor Who has some magical thing. And if someone could figure out what it is, everyone would start copying it. Well, I think the magical thing is change. I think the longevity of Doctor Who is based on the fact that different eras feel like different shows. I think the fact that you can watch, like, Ian Barbara, Susan, the First Doctor, and then you can watch Jamie, Zoe, and the Second Doctor, and you can watch the Third Doctor on Earth having, fighting aliens, locked down, not able to leave Earth. And then the Fourth Doctor going off and having these epic sci-fi adventures with so many different varieties of species as companions. I just described 4 different shows.
Yeah, and especially early in the Fourth Doctor's era, there's all this influence from horror movies.
Yes,
that's really cool.
I mean, even the Fourth Doctor's era, the great thing about, the Fourth Doctor's era is you can watch it as one show. It's 7 years of content. You can just watch the first episode and then watch through Legopolis and just stop watching. And I think that's what Doctor Who needs to be grand and good. And I think the problem with Doctor Who is that it had moments of success, but because the modern idea of running a pop culture oriented franchise is like unification of branding, every MCU movie has to have the same like weird gray color grading, right? I think the expectation was like, we need to just establish that like the David Tennant era is the correct version of the show, and we need to get all the other eras in line. That's why we have like First Doctor or audios where like Time Lords are intervening during the Time War. But I think the fact that the eras are different is what makes it good. And the fact that the latest era, I totally agree. The fact that the latest era that was stuck in this rhythm of being like, I'm the last of the Time Lords, the Gallifrey is gone. It was just a lot of the same stuff, and it just didn't. The show needs to be different, and I think that's something that Russell doesn't intuitively believe. I think it's something that Stephen Moffat believed in, and I know I'm projecting the things I don't like onto the writer. That is not my favorite. I'm projecting things I do like onto the writer who is my favorite. But Moffat was the guy who made 2 distinct eras as one writer. I think the 11th and 12th Doctor's eras are more different than the 10th Doctor and the 9th Doctor's eras, for instance.
I agree. I think they're still definitely both. They're still very both Moffat at their core.
Yeah. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is that Doctor Who needs to understand, like, it needs to. I guess I've already said. There's something I feel like I forgot to say that was important. But the fact that you can watch an episode of the Tennant era and then watch an episode of the Ncuti Gatwa era and then say to yourself, well, this is the same show, I actually think that's not good. And that's not going to be a common complaint from viewers. But as a longtime viewer of the show, I think you should say to yourself, God, is this the same show? Because I think that's what people say to themselves when they skip from like a Christopher Eccleston to a Matt Smith. And I think that itself is what keeps the show alive. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. One of the best things the show ever did was move on from the Time War, because a big problem with I think with the first Russell T Davies era is that if the Doctor is, that writing thing where they're trying to make the Doctor seem deep, right? So they have the Doctor say, oh, here's a thing, I'm sad about that thing, I have angst, or I'm angry, if it's always the same thing, it's just going to get frustrating to the audience. And the idea of the Doctor always being angsty about being the last of his kind, always being angsty about the fact that Rose Tyler is gone, it feels like you're hanging out with someone who hasn't moved on from stuff they should have moved on from a long time ago. It feels like you're hanging out with someone who like graduated high school 15 years ago, but is still deeply wounded about the fact that like their gym teacher called them fat or something. Like it's like you need to go to therapy, like for real. And the fact that the show continues to harper on those things, continues to be like, this season the Doctor's going to look sad that Gallifrey got blown up. It's like, oh, but it's the same. And not even in an aesthetic way, where I was talking about before. It's the same in a sense that I've seen this shit before and I want to watch a different show. And Doctor Who can't be the longest running show that is continuous in sci-fi if it's just going to be the same show every 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. That would be like if every new Star Trek show was trying to be exactly like the original series, or maybe exactly like the Next Generation. And none of them were trying to have their own spin on anything. They were just trying to emulate that formula over and over again because it was successful back then.
I also think the BBC tries to unify the brand too much, where, you know, they'll say,
They're putting the newest logo on everything, even if it's from a different era.
I think every era should have its own logo. I think they should keep doing that. What Titan was doing with having the 11th and 10th Doctors keep having new comics. I think that was the best era for comics Doctor Who has had, probably in the revived era. I think that's the kind of thing the show should be doing. The show should be going for more of these, like, oh, here's a book with the 8th Doctor or whatever. But there's a bit of a mentality of like, well, now that Jodie Whittaker's the Doctor, or now that Ncuti was the Doctor or whatever, we need to have everybody unify behind this. And it ends up being a major screw up, especially when it's like Jodie Whittaker has a really boring outfit, and so the merchandise went ham on that outfit, but it kind of sucks, so no one bought it. And suddenly the show is no longer a merchandising giant. So the fact that they put all their cards into the latest deck is a problem. And the show, the people in charge of the show, the comparison I give, it would be like if a new Star Trek show came out. So they said, okay, no more Spock toys, no more Spock Christmas ornaments, no more Spock this, no more Spock shirts. Spock isn't in this new show, so Spock isn't going to exist in our merchandising until we make another show with Spock. And it's just like a misunderstanding of what Doctor Who is on such a level.
Well, did they ever stop selling 10th Doctor merch? Because my understanding is that they've been constantly doing, like, obsessed with 10th Doctor merch for like the last.
They never stopped 10th Doctor merch. I'll give you an example of an example I find frustrating. I think the company is I think called Biff Bang Pow. It was this company, and they made they were in the scene, which was kind of trendy in the 2010s, of making Mego style figures. Do you know what Mego toys are?
I'm not aware.
They're the old Star Trek figures that are kind of like small Barbie dolls. The like, you know, the little ragdoll toys that are like posable of you know, Star Trek. You can just search Mego, M-E-G-O toy, and you'll see what it is. So Biff Bang Pow was a company that made a bunch of merchandise, and they started making Mego style figures of the show for collectors who were into that era of the show. And because collectors of Mego figures are often, like, you know, kind of older, probably grew up in the Tom Baker era, their line of toys exclusively focused on the Tom Baker era. So they were just making toys of different Tom Baker characters. They had Leela, they did a Doctor, they did a Dalek, and they were kind of, you know, going through the era, and they were trying to come up with more characters. And every once in a while they'd do like a Hartnell, or they did like a Matt Smith, but it was a much more limited thing. And if you listen to the commentary of the people who worked at this company, working with the BBC was so frustrating, because like they sent off the Leela doll, because they made a doll of Leela, and the BBC came back and said, the person writing the email said, that isn't even a Doctor Who character. That isn't even a Doctor Who character. Do not send us a character that isn't from Doctor Who.
Really?
Like the level of incompetence. And then he tells this story where he was in a meeting and he was pitching all these things about, like, we're trying to appeal to this different market of Doctor Who fans. By the way, all this shit would sell out. That's important. Like, they were selling out of stuff when the BBC would allow them to sell it, because sometimes they'd be like, we need to sign off on this before you sell it at that con. So they'd just be like, screw it, we're just going to sell it, because otherwise we're just going to have all this merchandise that we're not allowed to sell because they're asleep right now. But anyways, they did this story where they were in a meeting and they were doing all this talking about, like, the Fourth Doctor's era and how they integrate that into, like, appealing to this very specific niche of Doctor Who fans who might also be collectors of, like, vintage style toys. And the person they were on the call with went, you know, they paused and they go, license plates are square. The TARDIS is square. Maybe we should do something with that. What do you think?
Of course.
It's just like, wow, you were dumb. And then, so all their stuff was selling out, and they were in the process of making literally like 30 new toys, including like a War Doctor. They were making prototypes here and there. And then the BBC says, we've decided character options is going to be, we've over merchandised character options is going to be our only person we work with. And so that's why they lost the license. And it's one of those things where I look at that and I say, there was a company out there, Biff Bang Pow, who was successfully making money merchandising an era of the show that was not like the current Matt Smith run. And the BBC's level of incompetence at understanding the value in the show having many different niches led to the collapse of this thing that was really cool. And I think that's just, I do think that the show could be more successful if they learn to actually kind of market to the fact that it's like, yeah, there are these different eras of the show, and you can enjoy this era, that era. If you like the Twilight Zone, you might like the William Hartnell era. If you like James Bond movies, maybe you're a Pertwee era guy. Instead, they're like, we need everyone to know that David Tennant is the Doctor, And I think that shows a level of ineptitude that is just kind of tragic. And I think it's one of the biggest mistakes in the recent history of the show.
Well, I'm of the opinion that that's one of the core problems with New Who in general, that it's been static. It's been largely stuck in the same place. The Moffat era definitely was pushing things in a new direction. It was still largely, it was like a continuation of Russell's style. It was still definitely continuing a lot of
but it had that
what he'd set down. But it was at the very least sort of pushing things in a
think
new
there's
direction.
There's enough of a difference for it to be notable that like the Russell T Davies era had this like gritty, like rusty sci-fi feel, and then immediately Stephen Moffat is like, it's a fairy tale. The show's a fairy tale. I think that difference is enough that the switch over from Tennant to Smith actually does make a completely different era. I don't know how many times the show has successfully made that transition since then. I mean, I think Capaldi era was a success, but I don't know how often they've made that transition and stuck the landing of the new show.
I remember that when the Capaldi era started, everyone hated the 12th Doctor except me. I felt like the only defender of Series 8 when it came out. And then later on, like nowadays, and I'm by no means like a hater of the Capaldi era, but I think I'm a lot more critical of it than most people are. It's sort of like the roles have reversed. Now I feel like I get accused of like being a Capaldi hater, which absolutely isn't true. But
I get that.
Like you were talking about Hell Bent earlier. I don't think I see eye to eye with you on that episode. I personally I'm not a huge fan of it. But like, that's a whole other. I think personally, I would have liked to at least. I don't actually mind the stuff between the Doctor and Clara. I just think it's after building up the return to Gallifrey to the extent they did. I
will be really candid with you real quick. My laptop's about to die, and I don't feel like going to get my charger. So we should probably wrap things up.
Okay, I mean, we were already approaching the end, anyways. But yeah, no, it's been 2 hours. We can wrap things up.
Yeah.
I mean, we made it through all 4 of the main questions. So I guess, if you have any closing remarks, feel free to make them now.
I just think the show needs to be different.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's hard to imagine the show really making that change when it's a kind of a piece of clay that keeps getting passed back and forth between the same group of friends.
Yeah.
And that's
totally
why
agree.
I kind of like the idea of like, I think like it'd be cool if like, I don't know, if Australia made it, if New Zealand made a couple seasons of Doctor Who or something, because just like getting the show out of that clique, I think that's what it needs.
Because it's definitely, like we said, the Chibnall era almost seemed for a second like it was going to continue moving things forward, but then it just took 2 steps back, and then the show's been frozen in the same place since like this whole
look,
decade.
I'm gonna stop recording everything, and I will get you this audio tonight, and then we can wrap up our conversation off the record.
Sure. Yeah. For sure.
I will get back to you in 1 second.
Well, it was a slightly unceremonious ending because Quinton's laptop ran out of battery, so I'm wrapping this up on my own here, but I hope you guys enjoyed watching. And if you haven't seen the main video that this is linked to, I'm going to have it pop up right here. Check it out, and I hope you have a lovely day. Goodbye.